Hello everyone, xForts here, and welcome to JoJolion Chapter 60 review. So let's just get right into it. So the cover page, of course, we looked at this about a week ago, where we're going to be celebrating the 30th anniversary of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. This January marks the 30 years of the series being serialized, originally in Shonen Jump and then switching over to Ultra Jump as a monthly series. So that's great. We already talked about the 30th anniversary of JoJolion. So to get right into it, we just have the cover page of Gappy, just looking really cool. Already looked at that stuff. So to get into the actual chapter, we start off with the cover page with Josuke actually doing like one of those Jotaro like point poses, like one of those, but actually his hands kind of lowered like that in that sort of way. You guys know how Josuke looks, and yeah, I thought that was actually pretty cool. And the setting of this arc, I actually really like it, how it's like on the streets. It kind of reminds me of the Highway Star arc, and we'll get more into that later. So it says, whatever tries to block my way, I'll walk this path. And it's just kind of like those weird Araki quotes that I don't think translate well, but he's trying to kind of be like philosophical and like, not really philosophical, but just kind of have like an impactful statement. But sometimes they don't always sound right in English, if you guys know what I'm saying. So then when we actually get into the chapter, coming off of the cover page, we switch to a completely different setting, and we see two unnamed characters that we've never seen before. And so we see one girl who looks like she's kind of crawling on the grass coming up over a hill, and no dialogue really, and we just see her face. And this is a really mysterious character, especially the more we get into it. And we have another narrative bubble, not even a speech bubble, just words that say, a naive, hollow time. And then we see another character who people say alternate universe Fugo. Probably not. He just looks like Fugo. We already have this character's name, but yeah, he looks a little bit like Fugo. I like the shirt he's wearing too. It looks cool. And he says the Blue Lagoon. So then when we flip to the next page, they're just continuing on. He's talking about, you know, his ideal life or some of his fantasies, like he would love to. He says something, let me get the exact quote here, to be shipwrecked, just the two of us, clinging to wreckage and drifting together. So he's just kind of fantasizing, laying out in an open field, just thinking about how much he loves this girl and how much he wants to spend time with her. So he actually has like a book in his hand, it looks like, and he looks up after kind of fantasizing in his head, and the girl was just with him, and as soon as he looks up, she's gone. So we haven't heard any dialogue from this girl yet. She hasn't spoken, and when he looks up, she's really far in the distance. So like, either I'm just interpreting the timing wrong here, she like sprinted over there. So he looks up and he kind of loses track of her, and he sees her over by Superfly. Not actually Superfly, just a telephone tower or electrical tower. And he's shocked by this, like, oh no, like why is she doing this? Like he immediately thinks of the bad things. Like, I mean, if I was in that situation, I would think like, huh, what is she doing over there? Like this girl that I like what's she doing over there? So he must know that she has these sort of tendencies, because as we see, she's trying to harm herself. She's trying to electrocute her, trying to kill herself, or she's disabled in some way and she doesn't know what she's doing. So he says, no, wait, stay away from there. So like, I don't know. I feel like if anyone else was in this situation, it was two normal people, you would just think, what are you doing over there? Instead of thinking immediately like, oh, this person, like, why are you trying to harm yourself? Get away from there. So there must be something wrong with this girl, and he knows that she's trying to do this and she has these tendencies. And then he immediately sprints over there, and she's reaching out to grab the electricity, or she's just a younger girl and she doesn't really know any better. So as soon as she goes to reach out, the unnamed character flips in front of her and kind of blocks her hand away. And in the process, he touches like a piece of the electrical equipment, and it fucks him up. He gets destroyed. He gets electrocuted, trying to protect this girl that he loves. Well, I don't know. She probably isn't young, because this dude's talking about how much he loves her, or if he's talking about it in like a brother-sister, you know, father-daughter kind of way. But she looks pretty old, so I don't know what's up with this girl, man. Really mysterious character. So he gets electrocuted. We see kind of his whole body get completely destroyed. And this is where more mystery with this girl comes up. So he pushes her away, and she ends up facing the other way on the ground, and she's just like really like emotionless. So she just kind of like looks around, then she gets up and just starts walking away, which is weird. And we're going to come back to this once we get later in the chapter, because we'll learn more about why she's acting like this. So then we flip over to the current time, and we see the character, what happened after the electrocution, and his body is completely destroyed. He doesn't even look human at this point. He's missing all of his limbs, and they just turn into like these sort of like stubs, And then he starts talking about the shrine that he lives at, just kind of the history of it and how it hasn't changed and it doesn't change even after the earthquake. It stayed the same. And he's kind of content with his life right now, even though he's in the situation that he's in. And he says, honestly, I wouldn't mind living here for now. That's enough for me. Or that's enough for me. So, and then, he's still standing there with Jobin. And like I said in the last chapter, how this guy at one point might have been part of the Rokakaka exchange, but now he's sort of done with that, and he just, like, this is Yoshikage Kira, alternate universe Kira number 2. He just wants to live a peaceful life. So he says, it's really sad to hear that Damo and the others are no longer in this world, but he says, like I said before, the sort of thing that they were doing with earning and laundering money with the Rokakaka, or something serving some purpose to society, just aren't things I have interest in. So yeah, maybe he did that at some point, but he's not interested in doing the things kind of like a mafia style thing what Damo was doing with the Rokakaka exchange, and he doesn't want anything to do with it, and he's done with it if he was involved with it at one point. So although he is like, yeah, it's bad that they did that, Jobin, but you have to realize with the kind of work that they were in, they had it coming, or something like this was bound to happen soon with the shady business they were doing. So I mean, he doesn't really seem that sad. He's just like, yeah, those fuckers got what they deserved. And then in the next panel, we see really, like, he's kind of like an emo character, kind of. He says, you can just do what you want. There's no real meaning out there. Like, I just sit at this pond. There's no meaning to life. I'm just going to live here. I'm content, man. I'm just going to live here for the rest of my life. So, especially with the condition that he's in, I could definitely see why he's in that mindset, how he doesn't have any limbs or whatever. But, I mean, he's got Jobin, who brings him fried chicken every once in a while. It can't be that bad. So then Jobin says, if I offended you in any way, I apologize. So Jobin's like, all right. I hope you don't get mad at me, but I just want you to hear me out. And he says, seeing as you lost your body using equivalent exchange, this might not be completely uninteresting to you. So, if Jobin didn't mention that dialogue, it could have been a little bit ambiguous, and I really wouldn't even assume that this guy used the Rokakaka. I would have just assumed that he lost his limbs and his body was destroyed that way because of his because he got electrocuted. But then we find out that either right after he got electrocuted, or maybe he had a Rokakaka on him or something, or someone came and gave him a Rokakaka. He died by getting electrocuted, and then using the Rokakaka equivalent exchange, he lost all of his limbs. He lost what looks like most of his skin. And then Jobin explains to him, and it's kind of annoying at this point, because Jobin doesn't really know what the graft Rokakaka actually does. He's really just assuming things. So Jobin is trying to get this character interested in what the grafted Rokakaka branch does. He says the Rokakaka's equivalent exchange. If I said you could get your hands on something that was the next stage of equivalent exchange, would that pique your interest? So what Jobin thinks that the graft Rokakaka is an evolution of the fruit in itself, and he explains to him, he shows him a picture of Josufume and Kira, and then a picture of Josuke. He says these two used equivalent exchange and turned into this. And I don't know what Jobin thinks here, because that one graft Rokakaka, I feel like that situation was very, very specific. Like, if you had the exact fruit that came from that graft Rokakaka branch, if you just took a bite of it, you wouldn't just immediately fuse with someone. The reason why that happened is because they went underground together, and, like, even the fruit, while it was underground, changed as well, and they had time, and, like, Josufume and Kira were underground for a while, and then they came up as two people, which was a very, very specific situation. Like, everything with the walleyes could have had an effect on it. The tsunami happening could have had an effect on why they fused. And also earlier, when Niji Mermaid put the two fruits in the ground, I think it was Niji Mermaid, she put two fruits in the ground and she brought them up and she said, this is what the ground does here. It fuses two things together. So Jobin obviously does not know that ground over there by the walleyes is special, because if he did know that, he wouldn't even need to be in this situation at all. He would just need to go over to the place where you would put two things underground and use that instead of finding, like, the Rokakaka that he thinks would be able to do this. So Jobin is really in the dark, and he really doesn't understand how this works yet, because, I mean, if he really wants to use this new equivalent exchange that he's talking about that fuses two things together, I think he thinks that it works by just taking a bite of the Rokakaka in that way, and I don't think he fully understands what Josufume and Kira, all the circumstances that they went through to achieve this specific equivalent exchange that ended up fusing them together. Because, like I mentioned, the walleyes, the tsunami, being underground, and that area and everything, like that, the Rokakaka had an effect on that entire area, and it still does, as we saw, like, Niji Mermaid was still able to use the fruits to meld them together. So things are getting confusing right now in JoJolion. Very confusing. And then he says that this for sure happened. They fused together and Damo is dead because of it, which he means because these two people fused together and Josuke killed them. It's not really a direct result because they fused together. It's just they were fucking with Josuke and Josuke fucked him up. So and then Jobin says something really interesting here that can spark so much speculation for the rest of the series. He says, if we could get our hands on this Rokakaka, ... So I think what this means is that Jobin is interested in the equivalent exchange that fuses things together. And I think this means that somewhere down the line, JoJolion, we are going to get a new fused character. Maybe Jobin will fuse with someone. That's just like a random idea. That could happen, though, because Jobin is really interesting. He's really interested in the concept of equivalent exchange fusing things together. And he says, if we could get our hands on this Rokakaka, ... Maybe just for business, maybe just to sell it, or maybe Jobin has intentions of using this. And then we get the name of this character. It is Dolomiti. I'm just going to say Dolomiti. So as we see, we also see his stand revealed as well. A new stand in JoJolion. Like I said last chapter, we were guaranteed a new stand this chapter. And we are. This is Dolomiti's stand. And really, really fucking cool looking. It really matches him, as it looks like the stand was damaged as well. And its skin was kind of distorted after he got electrocuted. So I don't know if that's what his stand always looked like, but as of his condition right now, this is what his stand looks like, and it really fits him. It's got like little like T-Rex arms, really small arms, no head, but down by its like pelvis area, it does have like a little face. But I think it's a damn cool looking stand, man. I like it a lot. So and Jobin says, I need your ability. This doesn't look like something I can handle on my own. So we're going to get more into the stand ability once we get into the next scene of the chapter, which is back to Josuke and the theorized alternate world Emporio. And no, not Emporio. No, nowhere even close. He's just a kid in a baseball shirt. So as we remember from the last chapter, the kid was walking back towards Josuke. And, I mean, this is a really simple part of the chapter. It's just kind of a really simple stand fight. And we'll talk about more how the stand works once we get into it. So the boy just starts walking towards Josuke. Josuke's looking around like, all right, what's happening here? And the boy runs into a pole. So the boy's just walking towards Josuke. So there's a pole right here. And he just runs into it. And he just stays there. And he's got like his arms out. And he's like, come on, just let me... It's obvious that he's like a zombie, like a puppet sort of thing. So he's just trying to get to Josuke any means necessary. And Josuke is really confused by this. He's like, what the fuck is happening right now? And the kid is just still bashing his head on the pole, trying to get through it, to the point where like his eyeballs dripping out and his face is all bloody. And Josuke yells, hey, what the hell are you doing? And the kid eventually bashes his head enough to the point where he just like slides off to the other edge of it, and he flies backwards at Josuke. And Josuke does a pretty cool move with Soft and Wet here, where he just like kind of slides out of the way. And I think he made Soft and Wet trip the kid too, which was pretty funny. And the kid falls. So the kid immediately gets up completely bloody just from running into a pole once. And it's pretty clear that this is an automatic stand in the works, and very similar to Sheer Heart Attack, as it has one target, and it can't even think to move out of the way. It just has its sets on one target, and it can't. It's hard for whoever this stand is controlling, for them to move out of the way of obstacles and things like that. So then the car comes through, and there's a lot of action scenes actually in this chapter so far. Like a lot of, once we get to this kind of like stand battle with Josuke and this automatic stand, like it's no dialogue at all. So then the car comes out of nowhere and hits like kind of the front part of this kid, like his head in his hand. And there's a lady in the car, and she's just like, get the fuck off my car, are you kidding me? And the kid, still not stopping, is like reaching into the car window. And Josuke has like sort of an epiphany here, and Araki is really good at telling us exactly what's happening. Like, if you guys remember in Steel Ball Run, when Johnny just became a fucking genius out of nowhere, where alternate world Diego came in with the world, I mean, he used the world like twice, and Johnny immediately came to the conclusion that his stand must have the ability to stop time for around 3 or 5 seconds. That's what his stand does. And it's like, all right, Johnny, how the fuck did you think of that? You must be a goddamn genius. And Josuke is like before I even thought, like, how does this stand work, or what were the, means of the stand? Araki's kind of telling us how the stand activated through Josuke's dialogue. So Josuke says that the letter, the tooth inside somebody's tooth is, and he kind of says that someone gave that letter to the boy, and the boy touched it. I didn't open it itself, but I touched the letter itself. This is a stand attack. And then Josuke says again, this boy is coming after me because he touched that letter. So that's pretty set in stone. That's what Araki does. He tells us what stands do through people's dialogue. So I guess the boy touching the letter is what triggered the stand to sort of infect this kid and kind of trigger it in him. So we just get more dialogue between Josuke and this lady in this car, just trying to deal with this kid right now. So they're like rolling the window up and down, trying to like get him out, and the kid's just like just trying to get in. And this kid is like on the verge of death right now. And we do actually see him physically touch this woman. Like, this is gonna be important later. He like touches like her shirt and tries to like pull it down. You see a little bit of tit there, but like he does touch this woman, which is gonna be important later. So then he kind of does reach in the car and he grabs her tit. And Soft and Wet does this pretty cool thing. Soft and Wet, Josuke says. And he fills up a bunch of bubbles with coffee, and then he kind of projects the bubbles towards the kid. And then the bubbles pop, and the coffee goes all over the kid. I love seeing Soft and Wet use its ability all the time, because it's like every time he does it, he does something different, which is cool. And kind of a more traditional use of the ability, not really stealing or plundering or anything, just kind of taking something and moving it and kind of using it as a weapon. Like, he just as easily could have picked up the coffee and just fucking thrown it at the kid, but he was like, Soft and Wet, do this in this really fashionable and cool way. So the kid eventually makes his way throughout the car. The lady got out of the car. And I think at this point right here, the stand is not affecting the kid anymore, because the kid kind of runs out into the road, and then he's just like this. He's just like, fuck, whoa. And then obviously, because he took so much physical damage, the kid collapses and he dies right there in the street. So I think right at the end there, the kid regained his consciousness a little bit, and he wasn't being affected by the stand anymore, because he just kind of like, he wasn't chasing after anyone anymore. He just kind of stood in the street and was like looking around, was really confused, and he just drops dead. And everyone's like, oh, the kid collapsed. And then we see Josuke's bubble actually has the tooth inside it. And Josuke's question, was it a rock human, that tooth? So many questions. Reasonable questions as well. He's not just talking out of his ass. Very good questions here. Like, did Damo have other allies? I can't imagine this is someone part of that group, considering that this is a pretty pathetic ability that could be beaten in no time and has to manipulate children. But Josuke, don't underestimate the stand. You don't know its full ability yet. So he's thinking that I'm sure this is Dolomiti's stand in the works here. But if you remember from the previous chapter, the kid said, someone around the corner told me to give this to you. So it's very unclear here if this is happening simultaneously with Jobin's conversation with Dolomiti. So either Dolomiti's stand is extremely long range, which makes sense because of how automatic the stand was. And when the kid walked into the pole, he wasn't even able to move out of the pole. It had one target, and it just needed to move straight to hit that target. And whatever gets in its way, it'll just kill whoever. It'll just completely destroy it. It doesn't care about the physical well-being of whatever it's controlling, because as we can see, it can just infect someone else. So this might be Dolomiti's stand, just possibly, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense where Jobin's like, I need your ability. Yeah, that ability that can infect people and create zombie puppets. Yeah, I'm going to need that ability. It's kind of weird, but JoJo is weird. So I think it's going to be Dolomiti's stand, and I think maybe in the next chapter or so, we'll see that Jobin is somewhere in this area with Dolomiti, which I don't think Dolomiti would ever even agree to leaving the pond that he lives by, but maybe we'll see, because the kid did say that someone around the corner told me to give this to you, which raises another question that maybe it's not Dolomiti. Araki does like to give us these curveballs sometimes, so maybe Dolomiti's stand does have a different ability, and this is going to be nothing to do with Dolomiti at all, and it's just going to be another stand user. So yeah, and then let's just move on to the next panel here. Once again, Josuke is still just questioning, is this a rock human? If they want the Rokakaka, they should have waited until I found it, which does make a reasonable point. Like, if anything, you should have just waited until Josuke went to the plant appraisaler. Plant appraisaler comes back to the area, finds the grafted branch, and then you attack that way after you've already have the grafted branch located. But then Josuke kind of like questions Norisuke here, because he's like, the only one that knows about this phone is Norisuke-san. Like, what is happening? But obviously, as we saw in the last chapter, Josuke is kind of out of the loop right here, because Jobin and Kato, the mother of the Higashikata family, Kato, I think that's her name, she also knows about the, not really a direct cell phone, she just knows that Norisuke-san gave Josuke something. So Josuke a little confused, and he is unaware of Jobin and Kato's knowledge right now, or even the fact that they're in the works. And so Josuke is in the corner in like an alley, and he looks up, and the woman that was driving the car earlier that the boy touched is now zombified and in this puppet form. And as we can see, her face is bloody and beaten, and it looks like that she struggled a lot to even get to Josuke, and she also ran into a lot of things. So once again, enforces the theory that this is an automatic stand, and it doesn't care about the well-being of whoever it's infecting, and they're very simple-minded, and which is actually interesting to see this one actually crawl up a wall, it looks like. So obviously the woman did go through a lot of trouble to get to Josuke because she's all bloody, but she did eventually find her way to him. So how I think the stand works is that it will infect someone by triggering it by touching something that the stand's touched, maybe kind of like how Kira's works. Like, oh, Killer Queen's already touched that, you're fucked. My stand has already touched that, you're not my puppet. So the kid had the puppet, and then the kid touched the woman, which I think infected her, and then the kid kind of regained consciousness and was like, oh, I'm fucked, man. I just died. Just collapsed in the street. And then it infected to this woman because he touched the woman, and now the woman's chasing after Josuke. So, and then Josuke questions, it's contagious? I don't know if that's actually Josuke or just Araki telling us to question if it's contagious or not. So, and that is the chapter. A little bit of a shorter chapter, and there was a stand battle in it, which was pretty cool. And Jobin's dialogue. I'm gonna go back to Jobin's dialogue where he says, "If we could get our hands on that Rokakaka, we could," or whatever, and then ... That is going to be interesting. I really want to know what Jobin wants to do with the ability to fuse people together. That's going to be really interesting to see where that goes. But as of right now, Dolomiti, this could be his stand. I don't know if Jobin's talk with Dolomiti is happening simultaneously with this. Obviously, if it is, it's not Dolomiti's stand, and it's someone that's in this area. And it could be Dolomiti's stand, and it is happening from an extremely long range, which makes sense because of how simple it is and how it's just kind of... One thing about this arc that we're in right now, the Man Who Lives by the Pond arc, I guess we can call it, it reminds me a lot of Highway Star, as Josuke is sort of in a city-like area, and there's an automatic stand chasing after him, which is pretty cool. So yeah, it's kind of like alternate universe Highway Star in a sense. Obviously a lot different though, a lot bloodier, a lot more gore, and a lot more child death, I guess. So I like this though. It really does remind me of the Highway Star arc, automatic stand chasing after Josuke, literally. And yeah, he's just got to figure this out. So alright, hey guys, xForts from the future here, and when I was editing this video, I totally forgot that I mentioned that I would circle back to the beginning of the chapter and talk about Dolomiti's stand and the lover from the first couple pages of the chapter. So the way that the girl that Dolomiti was with when he was younger, the way she was acting was very reminiscent of the way that we saw the people who were being affected by his stand, presuming that his stand is the one affecting these people. So when the stand was having an effect on the woman and the boy, they had no dialogue, and they were very zombie-like, and they had very strange movements. And it reminded me a lot of the woman from the beginning of the chapter, how she kind of walked over to the telephone tower. She didn't talk at all, and she just really didn't show any emotion or anything, and she just kind of walked around mindlessly. And I really think that maybe Dolomiti in his younger age was using his stand to affect this woman in some way. Maybe not the same way that he's using it now in a very violent way, but maybe some way his stand was the reason why this woman was acting so mysterious in the way that she was. And that's pretty much all I want to mention with that. That's pretty much it for JoJolion Chapter 60. A lot of cool stuff to see with Dolomiti. Next chapter, we'll probably find out exactly who the stand user is, if it's Dolomiti or if it's somewhere else, and if Jobin and Dolomiti are actually in this area, because the kid did say that someone around the corner told me to give this to you, so it could be Jobin. So we'll see in the next chapter, Chapter 61. I might make a video doing some theories about what Jobin would want to do with the ability to fuse people together, but we'll see. Let me know what you guys thought about this chapter down below in the comments, and I am loving JoJolion right now. You guys know it's my favorite part, and this is a good arc we're in. I like this arc a lot. I like this stand. It's bloody. I like when JoJo gets a little gory, and this is definitely it. So, also one thing I wanted to bring up is if this does this stand have the ability to infect multiple people at once? Like the kid was the first one, and then when the kid was kind of around all those people, maybe did he infect all of the people around that area? Interesting to see. We'll find out next chapters. Thank you guys for watching JoJolion Chapter 60. A lot of good questions were brought up in this chapter, and I can't wait to get them answered and just more stuff to theorize. So, yeah, let me know what you guys thought about this chapter. Like the video if I fought your boredom or if you enjoyed. And thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed.